This is Morning Edition on GBH Radio. I'm Joe Mathieu. Thanks for joining us. This Thanksgiving has been downsized by the coronavirus. Smaller gatherings mandated by local authorities with cell phones, tablets, and screens at the table so families can break bread virtually. It's different. A Thanksgiving we would have not been able to imagine following its long history here in the Boston area, a history that has evolved a lot over the years, as we learn in a new book from local historian and author Anthony Sammarco. It's called Thanksgiving Traditions in Boston. And Anthony joins us now on Morning Edition. Welcome back to GBH Radio, Anthony. It's good to see you on Zoom.
It's great to see you, and thank you for having me.
Well, as kids, we learned that Thanksgiving started right here in Massachusetts, right? When the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock and shared a meal with the native people they discovered living there. Sound about right?
It sounds about right. But in 1621, they not only had a Thanksgiving harvest, but they actually had a Thanksgiving dinner. It wasn't just food. It was the fact that they were actually sharing in some ways that those that had survived, which half of the Pilgrims had died over the winter in 1620, 1621, I think in some ways was something that was a major feature. But we've become, in some ways, with the Pilgrim culture, realizing that these paintings that were done in the late 19th and early 20th century somewhat immortalize the idea of a Thanksgiving dinner. And what's come down to us is, of course, roast turkey with all of the fixings.
So what did they actually eat? Are you going to tell me they had lobster and chowder?
Sounds good to me. But one of the things is, in some ways, when we think of the Pilgrims, of course, the idea of roast turkey is synonymous. But I'm sure there were many, many things, because even in the 19th century, Sarah Josepha Hale, who was the woman who petitioned to make Thanksgiving a national holiday, would talk about the fact that, yes, roast turkey was served, but so too wasn't a loin of beef and pork, as well as chicken pies, turkey pies, and hams, and all sorts of different things. So it wasn't just the fact of one dish, it was many, and it was truly a feast. And Thanksgiving became synonymous not just with food, but it was immortalized with the American turkey.
Anthony, you mentioned when this became a national holiday, this was a local event for a long time.
Well, throughout the 17th and 18th century, not only the royal governors of Massachusetts Bay Colony, but even the governors of the Commonwealth would declare a day of Thanksgiving. And a day of Thanksgiving was not only a day off from work, but it was also something that included fun and, of course, food. And during that period, that day of Thanksgiving could be anywhere from September through February. And in the book, I talk about various governors, as I say, both before the Revolution and after the Revolution. And I show not only their portrait, but their Thanksgiving proclamation. And it was an important feature. And that is what evolved into 1863, when Abraham Lincoln signed the official act creating a national holiday on the fourth Thursday of November, and it's been celebrated ever since.
We're talking with local historian and author Anthony Sammarco about his new book, Thanksgiving Traditions in Boston. Was that date significant for any reason? Why the last Thursday in November?
Well, one of the concepts is Sarah Josepha Hale, who was the editor of Gaudy's Ladies magazine and a very well-educated woman, had actually petitioned for Thanksgiving to become a national holiday for close to 30 years. And of course, at the height of the Civil War, one had to realize in 1863 that year was momentous. And in some ways, I think Abraham Lincoln was trying to raise the morale and created the national holiday, which was only the third in this country. The first being Washington's birthday in February, the second, Independence Day on July 4th, and of course, this being the fourth Thursday of November. But 1863 was also synonymous because Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, and in that instance freed all enslaved people in the United States. So we realize in some ways that Thanksgiving might have also been the fact of, yes, commemorating our Pilgrim ancestors, but Thanksgiving too of not only for what we have, but also in that instance, the Emancipation Proclamation.
Years go by, and we get back to what you were saying to begin with, kind of the traditions that we associate with Thanksgiving, beginning with the menu. when did the cranberry and the stuffing and all of this stuff become synonymous with this
Well,
meal?
I love cranberry sauce. I mean, I've tried to make it myself, and here on Cape Cod, we have this wonderful bog that's not too far from us in Yarmouth, and I actually get cranberries from the bog. So I make various things, not only cranberry sauce, but cranberry bread. But in the early part of the 19th century, we began to see cranberries being harvested on Cape Cod, and they were a great source of nutritious aspect for scurvy for people on these whaling ships.
Hmm.
But in the period of the early 20th century, we would see people such as George Uran and, of course, later Ocean Spray Cranberries making not just a cranberry sauce, but also a cranberry drink. But it was in 1941 that they actually began to can cranberry sauce. And the log of cranberry sauce that we know from the supermarket has really only been known for the last 70 years. So in some ways, it's synonymous with Thanksgiving to me. Even though I always serve homemade cranberry sauce, I always have a log of cranberry sauce.
You are the real thing, Anthony. I'll tell you what. So, but we can at least say now that not only was there no cranberry sauce on the table at the first Thanksgiving, it was definitely not in the shape of a can.
No, nor was it chutney.
Joining us from Cape Cod and the, well,
Yes.
home of cranberries in Massachusetts, the great Anthony Sammarco. I've been looking forward to seeing you. Thanks for bringing us back through Thanksgiving traditions. That's the name of the book, Thanksgiving Traditions in Boston,
Yes.
as Anthony adds to an epic library of volumes, cataloging history here in the Boston area and in southern New England. Happy Thanksgiving, Anthony, and thanks for sharing part of it with us on GBH Radio.
Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving to you and your viewers.
This is GBH's Morning Edition.